In Mexico, protesters have burned ballot boxes in an attempt to disrupt midterm elections there. In Guerrero State, demonstrators threw rocks and blocked access to polling stations. Our Adam Rainey joins us live now from Mexico City. The polls are closed. Let's talk about what to expect, Adam.
Well, despite their best efforts to disrupt this national midterm elections, overall, about 98% of all polling stations were able to open. And the government, of course, is going to point to this as a success. But we see these dramatic pictures of protests, of burning ballots. It shows that there's still a lot of frustration, anger, and disgust with the government from various leftist sectors. But another big story here in Mexico on this election day is what looks like the victory of an independent candidate for governor in the northern, rich, industrial state of Nuevo León. If Jaime Rodriguez, who's known by the name of El Bronco for his straight talking and gruff ways, did indeed win, as exit polls seem to be showing, this could be a political earthquake here in Mexico. To keep talking about this further, I'm joined now by Jo Tuckman. She's the author of a book, Mexico, Democracy Interrupted. So, El Bronco, Jaime Rodriguez, why is he an important character now in Mexican politics?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, if an independent candidate wins an important state like Nuevo León, you know, rich, the home to some of the biggest companies in the country, very close to the United States, an image of itself as modern and forward-thinking and forward-looking. If an independent candidate wins Nuevo León, that could have ramifications throughout Mexico.
Does that mean you think that we may see viable independent candidates even running for the presidency in 3 years?
I think it certainly makes it much more likely. I think what Bronco did in Nuevo León was win despite having no money, despite having the media, the local media, largely against him, with innovative new strategies on social media to campaign with his own personality, which is very traditional in one way, but married with this very innovative strategy in his campaigning methods and the sympathy of people who have a disgust for the party political system, with a focus on anti-corruption, which many people see as intimately associated with the party, with all political parties. So if he was able to capitalize that in somewhere as important as Nuevo León, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that someone could emerge to do that on a national level.
Is it something worth having a cynical kind of viewpoint that he was in the PRI, the ruling party, for more than 30 years himself?
Yes, it's worth having a viewpoint that was part of what made it possible. You know, that he was a known quantity. He'd been a mayor on the outskirts of the capital of Nuevo León, Monterrey. He'd made his reputation as a hard man taking on the Zetas cartel in between 2009.
He survived assassination
He survived a couple of assassinations attempts. His daughter was kidnapped. I mean, there's various things that made him a kind of traditional strongman in some ways, which is a familiar figure within Mexican politics, but with this more modern side. And certainly he was an independent in the sense that he had no money and he wasn't within the party structure, and the parties did everything they could to destroy him.
While we see this kind of new force taking place in Mexico with him, we also see these teachers who are an old force that are always to be reckoned with. Do you think maybe they made some deal with the government, why they calmed down today and we didn't see more protests?
Well, there were quite a lot of protests. I mean, there were quite a lot of ballots burned, and there's clashes and an important show of discontent and, as you said, frustration and disgust. But the teachers' protest wasn't just an electoral protest. It is essentially about the education reform that they oppose. Just leading up to the elections, when they started ratcheting up their show of force, and showing what level of disruption they really could cause if they wanted to. There were these closed-door negotiations with the government. We don't know what kind of deals were made, if any, but there has to be a suspicion that the fact that there wasn't more disruption is because of something that was agreed on in those closed-door negotiations.
Well, democracy being fought hard here in Mexico with protests in the south and a new candidate winning in the north, it shows that this election will go on to have ramifications in the coming years.
All right, Adam, thank you for that. Adam Rainey, live from Mexico City.